country now. He says from January 2024, as well as on taxation. He also spoke a little bit about the education sector, says, they will be hiring more teachers. They have increased funding to the education sector, as well as just the push for understanding of the new university funding model. So that is something that we'll be having a conversation on in our interview segment, so stick around for that. However, the top of the page also speaks on Azimio wants Sabina Chege to refund PACs for Jubilee whip post. Azimio la Umoja wants Jubilee Party whip Sabina Chege to refund money paid to her, courtesy of the position, arguing that the post is unconstitutional. So that is a story that is on page 13 of the Daily Nation. Now, if you look at just the if that is even possible, for instance, for her to just refund the money that she's paid as a Jubilee whip, and now the coalition says the recognition of Jubilee as a parliamentary party is discriminatory and illegal, and the Azimio team wants Sabina Chege to refund money paid to her courtesy of the position, arguing that the post is unconstitutional. Also, top of the page, top of the world, Kipyegon, Kiptum shine at the athletics gala. The two world record holders, for that matter, David Kiptum, the marathon world record holder, as well as the 1500 meter, 5000 meter, and I believe 1 mile, not a mile, but 1500 meter and 5000 meter race. That is world record holder Faith Kipyegon, top of the world, as they were crowned athletes of the year. Now, on climate action, the papers read why Africa may end up leaving climate meet empty-handed. Amid the ongoing stalemate at the climate summit, Africa's negotiators say they will not agree on anything here unless Africa's top priorities are met. So, one of the global newspapers had, pointed out that President William Ruto is the self-appointed Africa's champion of climate action. Quite an interesting headline for that matter. And so it is also interesting that, this headline on why Africa may end up leaving the climate action or climate meet empty-handed, despite being on the forefront of fighting climate action, and saying, the other countries should walk the talk. If you say you're going to give 20 billion shillings, then perhaps that is what you should do. So those are stories making headlines on the Daily Nation. Now, to the Standard, Ruto opens Kenya's doors in visa gamble. Ruto opens Kenya's doors in visa gamble. President seeks to assure Kenyans suffering, says painful experience of higher taxes is now paying off by pulling the country out of debt distress, and announces Kenya will be visa-free next month, or starting next month. So what does that mean for the tourism sector? What does that mean as well for the security sector? And he says there will be a digital platform where they will be able to keep track of whoever will be coming into the country instead of applying for a visa. Now, according to the head of state, he said the current inflation rate is at 6.8%, down from a high of 9.2% last year. He says the amount of money lent to 21 million shillings from the Hustler, to 21 million Kenyans from the Hustler Fund is at 42 billion shillings. He also says the vulnerable will pay access to health coverage down from 500 shillings to 300 bob in the new Social Health Insurance Fund, SHIF. He also says the number of active housing development sites employing 120,000 people is at 31, and says number of learners to receive coding training under a KICD approved program is at 4 million shillings. So those are some of the aspects he spoke on during Jamhuri Day celebrations. Now, Kenyans expect fuel prices to fall as well, as we're looking forward to the review of the month of December, which is tomorrow, December 14th, or normally it's 14th of every month. And so there is expectation of a big reduction in pump prices after global oil trends defied the gloomy projection by the Energy Cabinet Secretary Davis Chirchir. So it could be good news for Kenyans come tomorrow, could be worse for Kenyans come tomorrow. And so that is something we're all looking forward to as well. As at top of the page, Kenyan superstars on top of the world, Faith Kipyegon and Kelvin Kiptum scoop World Athlete of the Year honors, as Faith Cherotich and Emmanuel Wanyonyi win the Rising Star category at the 2023 Global Awards. Well, I might have said David Kiptum earlier, so pardon me for that. It is Kelvin Kiptum who is the world record holder in marathon. Then finally, the Star, Ruto's visa order to bolster tourism, similar to what the Standard has put as the headline, Ruto's visa order to bolster tourism. The Kenya Kwanza administration is under pressure to deliver on its pledges, and the president says no foreigner will be required to obtain a visa starting January. So that is means gates open for the Republic of Kenya. You can come in and out anytime you wish as a tourist. Even as a struggling economy, Kenya is shocked as leading corporates post losses amidst economic crisis. And on heavy taxation, Kenya has taken the wrong development path, needs urgent remedy, says Raila Odinga. So those are the newspaper headlines of the Daily Nation, the Standard and the Star. Right, so we take a break. We'll be back in just a bit, and we'll be having a conversation on tracking 60 years of independence. What have we achieved? What have we not achieved? What was said during the celebrations by the head of state, President William Ruto, as well as what was left out? Were your expectations met? Well, that conversation is coming up after the break. My guests are already around, so stay tuned. Start sending in your feedback. Our SMS line is open, as well as on our social media platforms. Morning Live returns in a bit.
Watching EBN TV, transforming your world.
Through the morning rush and the buzz, find a voice you can trust, a voice of reason, a voice of direction, and a voice of hope.
Good morning. Welcome to the Morning Live. I'm Cynthia Nanjala.
And I'm Samia Dika. Rise and shine, folks. We hope you are ready for an energizing start to your day.
Absolutely. We are here to bring you the latest headlines and trending news stories from the world of politics,
business and finance, health and lifestyle,
agriculture and sports.
So grab your coffee, sit back and get ready for a fantastic morning of engaging discussions and news segments.
Join us through our social media handles, #The Morning Live. This is Morning Live, exclusively on EBN TV.
Walisema mnywa maji kwa mkono mmoja,
kiu yake ipo pale pale. Ndiposa tumekuletea wewe mtazamaji wetu
mkono mwingine ili kukata kiu yako na ari yako ya ufahamu.
Naam, ngoma imechezwa mtazamaji, basi hatuna budi kulisakata kukuletea wewe ufahamu wa kaunti yako,
tukiangazia masuala ya siasa na uongozi,
jamii na itikadi,
maendeleo na changamoto katika kaunti yako. Ungana nami Belinda William,
nami Emmanuel Marwa
kwenye makala ya Gatuzi Langu kila siku ya Jumatatu saa 5:30 hadi saa 6:30.
In a fast-paced world filled with distractions, it's easy to lose sight of what truly matters: your relationship with God. Every Tuesday and Thursday, we take you on a transformative journey of building your faith, without which it's impossible to please God. A journey of introspection and discovery of who you are in Christ Jesus.
For you to walk with God, you should not crumble when you come under pressure. Kama umeokoka, sema umeokoka mpaka mbele ya president, mpaka mbele ya chief justice, mpaka mbele ya kila mtu. Hiyo ndio kuokoka ya ukweli. Kuokoka ya ukweli.
Enjoy a faith-filled environment of worship and ministry of the word every Tuesday and Thursdays from 9 a.m. with Reverend Felix Kevoy, exclusively on EBN TV.
Every Sunday from 9 p.m. Christian World Today. A look at what is happening in the Christendom. We look at revivals, controversies, persecutions, and in-depth interviews on issues affecting the church. Christian World Today with Frederick Njiri.
Hello, praise the Lord. My name is Pastor Joseph Musajawaza of Unfailing Love Ministries. I'm inviting you every Wednesday to join us on our program, Victory Through the Word. In this program, we teach you God's Word. We teach you to find solutions and answers to the struggles of life through the Word of God. Everything you ever go through in life, every pain, every tear, every worry, and every questions that you may ever have in this life. You may not get answers out there, but in God's word, there are answers and there is a solution. The Bible says that God has exalted his word above his name. In his word, there is hope. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but his word will always remain abide. I encourage you, engage with us as we study together, as you ask your questions, and let your questions be answered as you are built and as you hear God's word. Our church is located in Umoja, Inako, near Olobon Hotel, just off Sango Stage along Moi Drive, and the court is known as Church Court. Give us a visit and your life will not remain the same. God bless you. Let's meet every Wednesday from 7:30 to 8:30 p.m. only on EBN Television.
your world.
Every Saturday from 8:30 a.m.
But we should not be afraid to interpret scripture.
Get to know the story behind the Bible. Why was it written? To whom was it written? And what was happening when it was written? Understand, get to know, learn how to properly interpret the scriptures so that you're not deceived.
In the book of Revelation, and we have started to enter into the happenings, because these are things that are going to take place hereafter.
Join Pastor Felix Kevoy and his team as they go through the different books of the Bible and give you the theological interpretation of the same.
At the very introduction of the book of Revelation, the book lays clear what is contained in here.
Every Saturday from 8:30 a.m. on The Theology Show, only on EBN, transforming your world. Every Thursday from 8:30 p.m.
Listen, every man needs God. And every man needs to learn to humble himself before God.
Enjoy teachings from Pastor Chris Oyakilome.
Here's what the Lord is instructing you to do. Prepare yourself in the Word of God. Feed your faith. Prepare yourself in the Word.
Build your faith and get to know who you are in Christ Jesus.
Feed your faith. There's a spiritual attack of some kind through sickness. Build your faith strong.
Every Thursday from 8:30 p.m. on EBN TV, transforming your world.
Through the morning rush and the buzz, find a voice you can trust, a voice of reason, a voice of direction, and a voice of hope.
Good morning. Welcome to the Morning Live. I'm Cynthia Nanjala.
And I'm Samia Dika. Rise and shine, folks. We hope you are ready for an energizing start to your day.
Absolutely. We are here to bring you the latest headlines and trending news stories from the world of politics,
Business and finance, health and lifestyle,
agriculture and sports.
So grab your coffee, sit back and get ready for a fantastic morning of engaging discussions and news segments.
Join us through our social media handles, #The Morning Live. This is Morning Live, exclusively on EBN TV.
You are watching EBN TV, transforming your world.
Walisema mnywa maji kwa mkono mmoja,
Kiu yake ipo pale pale, ndiposa tumekuletea wewe mtazamaji wetu
mkono mwingine ili kukata kiu yako na ari yako ya ufahamu.
Naam, ngoma imechezwa mtazamaji, basi hatuna budi kulisakata kukuletea wewe ufahamu wa kaunti yako,
Tukiangazia masuala ya siasa na uongozi,
jamii na itikadi,
maendeleo na changamoto katika kaunti yako. Ungana nami Belinda William,
nami Emmanuel Marwa
kwenye makala ya Gatuzi Langu kila siku ya Jumatatu saa 5:30 hadi saa 6:30.
Well, welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. You're watching Morning Live, and we're just about to get into the conversation of the day. We are tracking 60 years of independence. Now, it is 13th day of December, so yesterday was Jamhuri Day, or the 12th of December was Jamhuri Day, and we were celebrating 60 years since independence. And the head of state, President William Ruto, led those celebrations at the Uhuru Gardens, and he spoke on various issues of, the economy, on the democracy, spoke a little bit about the elections last year, says they were the most transparent, and the will of the people was heard. He also spoke a bit about the education sector, so we just want to really track what he said and to see if that made sense. So my guest is in studio. I'm joined by Willie Skoi, a governance expert. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and we're expecting any minute from now, George Ngaida will be joining us, a political analyst. We do hope that he makes it. So Willie, let's just get started on this conversation this morning. Yes. Perhaps just an overview of what the head of state spoke on yesterday. What is your reaction to that?
Okay. Yesterday, as any other day, when you expect our fifth president to speak, of course, he will try as much as he can in his means possible to give Kenyans hope. Yeah. He will also not disappoint by including his normal lies in his speeches.
Why would you call them lies?
Because they are not factual. Anything that is not factual is a lie. It can't be proven, it can't be considered anything. Empty promises that are given, if you keep on promising and promising and promising without working on your promising, then that you're basically lying. Yeah. Yes.
Perhaps I'll just stop in that, because the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua, said, 1 year is not enough to really fulfill what they've been able to pledge, or at least what they pledged during the campaign period. So this is to say perhaps they need a bit more time, and he says 5 years is also not enough, perhaps 10. So isn't time what they need? A lot of people would argue that.
Okay, you can't be planning for tomorrow if you're not working on it today. You have to show some progress, and you have to prove that even if we trust you with tomorrow, we'll have to trust you based on whatever you are doing today or whatever you've been doing before. But you can't be having the whole time complaining about tomorrow, about 5 years, about 10 years, yet even the first year that you have been in the office, you can't account for it. You are here every weekend, every day, launching projects that were initiated by your predecessors, and you want to add your name onto it. You see, it is good even if you are asking us to give you 10 years, at least show us what you are doing in these first 2, 3, 4 years, so that we can see at least the work that you've initiated and how it is progressing, and we trust you with the 10 years, that if we give you the 10 years, you'll have it, and you'll actually come to achieve whatever you had promised people. Yeah. But even if you can't trust you with a small one, how will you trust with a massive number of years? That only means that you can imagine now that these people have been in the office for just 1 year, and in less than 3 months, how many times have we experienced national blackout? So you want to tell me if you give them 10 more years, how many times will you be experiencing all those national blackouts? And you know how long they take, and you know what happens to the economy during that period. So you can imagine the infringement and the pain that we are going to face in the next entire 10 years that they're asking for. Even their first year, they are hiking prices, they are overtaxing Kenyans and all that. What do you have to expect in the next 10 years?
All right, so we'll be getting into the details of what he said, what he didn't say. Well, George Ngaida is here, so 8 minutes from now, he'll be joining us in studio. Now, however, Kenya is celebrating such a monumental, step in history, 60 years of independence. Basically, it's been 60 years of self-rule, 60 years of having about 5 presidents now, including the current president. If you look at just the progress we've made, what can you pinpoint and say now that is a step that we've made towards the right direction, just basing on the past as well?
Whatever we're making towards the right direction as a country is that the rate of one thing that we should all agree, and it should reach to the toppest person who can hear this, is that the number of foolish Kenya is increasing. Is increasingly decreasing. So it means the number of foolish Kenyans is running low at a very high rate. So many Kenyans are empowered, so many Kenyans are envisioned, and so many Kenyans are having this civilized mind that it is too bad to take them for granted each and every time. Number two, another thing that we can pinpoint and actually agree is that we have been having growth, and we've been growing, even if it's step by step and small steps and baby steps. We have been growing in terms of healthcare, in terms of security, in terms of education. We are progressing well. At least we are having something, and we only need good governance to keep the growth going. But if we again have the bad governance and bad government that is in place, even the baby steps now, we will be progressing making one step ahead and making 20 behind, which will not make any sense. Yes.
All right, so let me now introduce our guest, a political analyst, George Ngaira. Karibu sana. Yeah, good to have you again.
I've missed you.
Here I am. Here we are.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we're just tracking 60 years of independence, basically looking at what we've been able to achieve so far. Willis Korea has critically pointed out that, you know, there's really nothing to smile about based on what the head of state said yesterday. He spoke about various issues on the economy, what his government has been able to do so far, what, you know, the country's you know, democracy looks like, says parliament is independent, says, you know, the county assemblies are also independent. But from where you sit, just listening into the head of state yesterday and some of the various issues he spoke on, what is your reaction to that?
Thank you very much for having me, Cynthia, once again. The president articulated, as has always been, a very charismatic leader, probably the most, most articulate president we've ever had in the history of our country. And he went on to paint a picture of some of the key things that he believes the country is progressing well, particularly when it comes to food production, you know, health and the education sectors. Three of the major items that were on his speech yesterday.
Just a bit, I'm being informed there's a bit of a problem with your mic, so we'll be able to fix it in just a bit. I believe we should be taking a break. That when we come back, we'll be able to just pick it up from where you've left, and you can able to speak about this charismatic leader and articulate leader that you so much say he is. So we take that break. We'll be back in just a bit.
Walisema mnywa maji kwa mkono mmoja,
kiu yake ipo pale pale, ndiposa tumekuletea wewe mtazamaji wetu
mkono mwingine ili kukata kiu yako na ari yako ya ufahamu.
Naam, ngoma imechezwa mtazamaji, basi hatuna budi kulisakata na kukuletea wewe ufahamu wa kaunti yako,
tukiangazia masuala ya siasa na uongozi,
jamii na itikadi,
maendeleo na changamoto katika kaunti yako. Ungana nami Belinda William,
nami Emmanuel Marwa
kwenye makala ya Gatuzi Langu kila siku ya Jumatatu saa 5:30 hadi saa 6:30.
You are watching EBN TV, transforming your world.
Right, welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. You're watching Morning Live. So the conversation continues, tracking 60 years of independence. Now, before we took that break, my guests are in studio, Willis Koya, governance expert, as well as George Ngaira, political analyst. And Ngaira, we were on to you, and you were just, reacting to the head of state speech yesterday. So go on. Yeah,
I was saying a very articulate president as usual, and he's probably the most articulate president that we've had since independence. And he was trying to paint a picture of the current status of the country and how the year has been, and particularly focusing on three very important issues. He touched on food production, which obviously with the fertilizer as his pet project, on how he's been able to address food production, how he's restructured the health service system with the new bills that we have that have created new institutions to sort of address the health issues in the country, as well as creation of jobs. So from where he sits, he paints a picture of a country that is heading towards the right direction, but that is yet to be felt by Kenyans on the streets. And we hope that can begin to trickle down so that we can begin to get the benefits of this brand new government of President William Ruto.
Yes. Now, it's been 60 years since, Kenya was able to get a president of its own, and we've had 5 different administrations. And each of the administration, of course, you can single out the good of the administration, the bad, and the ugly. So I'd love to hear from you, perhaps 60 years later, what is something that the country is doing right?
Kenya, of course, obviously, as a new democracy at 1963, is when we as Africans were beginning to assume the real structures of managing our own country. Remember, up until then, there was no republic called Kenya. And probably if you go back to around 1912, when Kenya became effectively a colony of the British Empire, there was no country called Kenya. It's just a bunch of Africans living across the jungle. So we had to start from somewhere. And so as a new country handed over to the black Africans and beginning to practice our democracy, when you look at what we've been throughout the 60 years, from when we were one-party state into the multi-party era of politics, and Kenyans have kept on improving. The very first President Jomo Kenyatta, when he came in the first time, he actually committed to address some of the key issues that he thought at that particular time were very important to the republic, and that was food production, to address hunger, access to good medicines, to address health facilities, as well as education, so that Africans can become literate. When you look at the number of Kenyans at that particular time, the country had just about 8 million people, and Nairobi alone had 300,000 people. Can you imagine? We are now 6 million. Obviously the population has gone up. But when you look at those statistics in terms of the Kenyans that are able to access sort of good medical facilities, our health infrastructure, our education infrastructure as well, we have fairly done well, but there's much more to be desired. All
right. So now let's talk a bit more about the economy, and this is something that has really been at the center of this particular administration, because if it's not the taxes, it's inflation, it's the fuel prices, which we're expecting will be reviewed tomorrow. Now, one of the things the head of state said, Willis, is that Kenya is safely out of the dangers of debt distress. Basically, we're out of debt, and that has been one of the things that the administration has been talking on, particularly on taxes. Says, we have been living beyond our means. We need to collect more taxes so that we pay these debts. If you look at just how the shilling is plunging, basically, has that ripple effect as well on what we are paying. So is Kenya safely out of the dangers of debt distress?
It's not. It's funny that those statements come from the same person who some few weeks ago was in India borrowing money and increasing more debts for this country. It comes from the same person who has shot the debt of this country from where he found it. You see, now that's why I told you, it's what you expect from his speech anytime he speaks. He will give you hopes, he'll tell you the good plans we have and include his small and big lies inside the statement. You see, when you say that we are out of debt, just because you are trying to overtax people in the name of telling them you are paying the debt, doesn't add up. While behind the doors, I'm not even sure if he's in the country right now. Maybe he has gone to ask for more help and more debt outside there. So it is very, to some point I can say it is not a good thing. It is annoying, for lack of a better word, to come and publicly address people knowing very well whatever you're telling them is contrary to whatever is in the ground. The guy has mastered the art so well, and he knows most Kenyans lack information. And that is why if you lack information and I come jiggle with you and you expect to trust me, and he works on the trust of the country. He works on the trust of the people of Kenya, that he's the president, so they'll all listen to him and whatever he's saying. But that is not very true. Look deep into how many people are digging deep into the statements that he makes. Yesterday alone he said we have made an advancement in terms of education and all this, and it's barely 1 month since we realized that they just released KCPE examination. We had a school of students receiving the same marks in the same subject, and we even had a student, a 14-year-old. Imagine, where are we going as a nation 60 years later of independence if a 14-year child has to go to court to have her papers and her marks restated to her? What are we trying to show the world? And we are here bragging of how we are making advancement, we are doing all this and all that. No, we just need to come back to the drawing board. We really need to do that.
Yeah. But then if you go with that particular kind of thinking, so how now do we fund the budget? Because we are so low on the revenue that is coming in because, of course, the expenditure, the recurrent expenditure, development expenditure, money that needs to go to the counties, to various sectors. Then how do we fund this budget? Because seems the last option is borrowing.
Do you know why we are lacking all these monies and all these finances? Because the government officials in place are stealing the money that are supposed to be doing those things.
Allegedly.
Yes. And there are others who have been convicted and proven guilty by the court of law. And it is in the public domain. And we've seen the reports from the DPP. We've seen government officials being questioned by the EACC each and every time. If we just have a working system that everything needs to work the way it's supposed to be working, we can't be here complaining about the money going to the counties, governments, to different ministries and all that. Because if you see the kind of taxes and the tax returns that Kenyans return every month, and the reports were given by the KRA, if you consider it, and we look very well based on also, that is just on the revenue collection alone. If you consider other means of collecting more revenues to the country, you can find the report that you always have from the treasury can supply our budget up to around 60, and even if we need help, it can be just a help of maybe 40% to run our economy. But now when we have all this coming through, and then we have incompetent people with the gluttonous mindset to grab everything that belongs to the public, you see, we will always be complaining of lack of finances every day, day in, day out.
Yeah. Gaida, I'll come to you. Such a bold statement to make by the head of state. Yes. Kenya is safely out of the dangers of debt distress. Looking at the money that we are paying in debts at 10.1 trillion shillings, more than the country's revenue. That is basically $66 billion. So to make that kind of statement, it's such a bold way to put it, because eventually when the Treasury releases more statistics into this particular financial year, yes, I don't see a way where we would have paid all these debts just once and for all.
Personally, I'd be very curious, I'd be very interested to hear from the President what miracles he's been able to perform in the last, say, 12 months to be able to sort our liquidity issues. Because when you look at the budget mix that we have, and look at even the amount of allocation that just goes into development budget, because a huge chunk of the money that the money that we're going to spend in this particular financial year goes into addressing what you call the recurrent dates, and then the current expenditures of the national government, or obviously national government, the county governments, and then you have paying due debts that you have annually. When you look at that mix, the government still has a very small budget, a small amount of money that it's able to actually put into a development budget. So I'll be very curious to probably hear from the President again, for him to clearly illustrate on what in which particular ways has he been able to address the issue of addressing our national debt. This president has been out of the country 43 times in 50 weeks. That means 80% of the time. Just listen to me. 43 times. The president has been out of the country for 3 times in 50 weeks. A year has 54 weeks, so it means 50 out of 43, it means 90% of the time. The president is not really in the country. And you know, he probably is the most traveled president in the history of our country. Because even President Jomo Kenyatta, throughout his 15 years, he never left the country more than 20 times. President Moi, who was president for almost 24 years, didn't even equal that 40 times what this president has covered in a year. So clearly we have a country that seems to be having the cash flow, but the cash flow is not quite reflecting on the papers, because the statements from the CBK and from the National Treasury on the state of the liquidity of the country, that's why you've had, we just had issues with some civil servants in certain parts, such as like Kenya Posta Kenya, haven't been paid their salaries for 5 months. That can't be in a country that has handled its liquidity well. So that we are waiting to see, and I hope the president, as a civil servant who has a duty to ensure that Kenyans are informed on the affairs of their taxes, is able to elaborate further on how he's been able to address that.
Now, you know, you've actually spoken on expenditure, and this is something he also addressed in his speech yesterday, and he says, you know, the government has been able to cut back on expenditure, you know, basically what the government is using. And the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua, has been very much on the defensive side, saying, you know, these trips are necessary because he's going to look for money. And some of this money that he's brought back, or at least will come, are donations actually from these European countries. So, you know, from the government point of view, perhaps this is the way to go, you know, to actually go to the funds or to the financiers themselves, just to get this money, because we need it perhaps as a country, because, you know, the taxes may not be enough, the revenue may not be enough, because Kenya year in year out misses on its target, apart from, you know, the financial year 2021 2022 where they're able to hit the target. So cutting back on expenditure but still the travels, you know, does it make sense?
You know, Cynthia, what's really annoys me a lot on this issue of cutting down expenditures is that you have a leader who's not leading by an example. Because you can't have looking at what the Deputy President has been popularly, you know, been quoted to having, one of his favorite words has been that the coffers were empty. And probably even me, when I woke up today, I found the coffers were empty. So I was trying to come away here. But clearly, it's an indication that this government indicated that when it came in with the huge financial challenges, and that the government didn't have resources. They even quoted a figure. They said they only found 90 million shillings in our less than $1 million in our public funds. For a government that comes into such a financial situation, is not the kind of government that you'd expect to behave the way it has behaved in the last 12 months. Because obviously they came in, and the very first thing they did was to spend almost 200-300 million in refurbishing State House. And if you've been to State House before, I've been there, because I saw now they've done some cabros, and there's quite unnecessary expenditures, not something that you would think is an immediate cost. And even just looking at how the president has been able to structure his government, the first thing he did was to expand government. You know, just before he came in, we had about 43 permanent secretaries. He added the number of state departments to about 51, adding those as 9 more state departments. And he expanded also some of what you call the semi-autonomous government agencies, the SAGAs. You know, that's where you find the likes of David Ndii in economic units, which are considered as sub-units of government. You wouldn't expect that from a leader that has come in to find empty coffers. So it's really debatable as to whether this president has or has not been able to cut costs, because when you look at some of the policy proposals that he's been able to sort of address, might indicate that he's interested in ensuring that he has a lean government, but his actions do not reflect what he's alleging to the great Republic of Kenya.
Koi, on taxes, you know, the head of state said he's had to make painful decisions that have required a lot of sacrifice from Kenyans. And a patriotic Kenyan will think, you know, that's perhaps what I should be doing, sacrificing, you know, and just accepting the taxes that will come in, because this is money that will be going back to government. So on taxes, really, those taxes that have been implemented, the housing levy, and, you know, the taxes more that on businesses, isn't that a good sacrifice for a patriotic Kenyan?
Okay, it would have been a good sacrifice if the taxes were used correctly and in the right manner. You know what pains Kenyans the most is that you have to sacrifice for paying to the NHIF, which will only cater for your beds and cannot even cater for your medicines in the hospital. You have to sacrifice paying taxes, and the education fees in the universities are planned to be hiked so high. You are paying for taxes, and someone is planning to scrap off the free education. You can imagine all these situations, and your money, you're not getting the value for your money. That is where the problem is. You see, I'm not telling Kenyans to avoid paying taxes or something like that sort, but pay tax and also be questionable about what your tax is doing. And that is why most Kenyans are feeling the pain of just paying taxes, increase in VAT from different products all over. It cuts across every product that you consume or you manufacture. And it's even worse for manufacturers, because you even have to go through double taxation. You have to be taxed while manufacturing, and also while selling your product you also get taxed. So you can imagine this thing, in as much as he's even making this country a global village by scrapping off the visas in the name of attracting investors. No more. The investors that we have in the country already, others are pulling out, others are moving their operations out of the country, and Kenya has been known to be the economic hub of East Africa. So you can imagine if big investors in the country are trying to move out because of taxations and all that. You can imagine like other big companies trying to shut down because they have crises in the courts. They are not able to pay their employees, and you find it is due to backlog from debts and taxes that they are paying to the government. So it gives you a questioning aspect of, yes, we are paying for the taxes, and where is our taxes going to?
Yeah. So is the high taxation avoidable? Can it be avoided?
It should be regulated.
How?
The regulation, by regulations basically is, the government has people, and it has, even if it doesn't have people, they can come for people like me. We have the capacity to formulate policies that will bring both a win-win situation for the country. We cannot be overtaxing an individual in the aim of helping him, and we are not helping him. In as much as you can imagine, you by your dad or your parents asking you for you to pay for them to identify you as their own, and yet you didn't even tell them that you wanted to be their child in the first place. So in such scenarios, we cannot be here trying to formulate things in our heads and say that we can avoid paying taxes and all that, because at the end of the day we also need these services to be done. And what we can do to regulate is that we can have the structures and things in place by the government, that if for whatever percentage comes from the taxation, this is supposed to be doing this, this is supposed to be doing this, and this is supposed to be doing this. And if we have that structure and well formulated and followed to the latter, we'll have a running country, we'll have a working system, we'll have a happy people. Like just like the first world countries, I know they're paying so much taxes, but at least they're having the value for their money.
You know, on the issue of taxation, I've been a big supporter of the president on how he's been moved in to ensure that more and more Kenyans are accountable. You know, Cynthia, out of the 54 million Kenyans, we have about 30 million adults who can work, and who are adults that can work legally and earn an income, meaning that they're taxable, they fall within the taxable income depending on what they're generating. Because there is a minimum, because we have a minimum provision of what it means, what is considered taxable income. So if I'm 18 years and I'm earning anything about 16,000, I'm also due for paying of my pay as you earn, and the other deductions. And so one of the reasons that this government, the national government has been struggling with revenue has also been tax evasion, because we have so many Kenyans who are not paying taxes. You know, when you go to some of these, I went to one of these abattoirs here where they sell meat. There are people who come there casually with animals, a whole live animal, which weighs, say, averagely 200 kilos. And then, you know, a wholesale price of, say, 400 shillings per kilo. You have somebody pocketing almost 80,000 by cash and goes home. That person generates over $1 million in a month, but hardly pays even a single tax. So when the president moved into sort of the structured KRA and be able to give it capacity by you know, by hiring new tax, or they're calling them, I think, tax officers, there's something they're calling them, but the idea is they're tax collectors that are supposed to go in for the SMEs, because out of the 18 million Kenyans that are considered to be working, and you have about 3 million or so who are permanently, permanent and pensionable. You have another 15 million who are just hibernating in between and are generating income. You can imagine all what the government collects is only from 3 million Kenyans. What will it be like if it's just improved by doing 3 million or 3 million other Kenyans? Then we'll be able to collect almost 6 trillion shillings. In that, this government is actually expecting to collect about 2.9 trillion this financial year. That's the target that KRA is sort of trying to address. So we can imagine the other 15 million Kenyans who are hovering around and not paying their taxes. If you net just 5 million of them, we're able to collect a significant amount of taxes that we have, so that at least we're in a good place in terms of cash flow. Because the challenge that we have is that even though this government is very reckless in its spending, reckless in its management of the affairs of the people of Kenya, a very tribal government, I keep saying it all the time, is a tribal and an incompetent government. Sometimes you even think maybe some people were born incompetent. You know, Cynthia, sometimes you can be incompetent by birth.
By default.
Because it's very reckless, because you have a president that is legitimately addressing the issue of our liquidity in government by talking, and every Kenyan would agree with him that it's important that we address the issue of governance, cut down on cost. But the next day is on a plane going to some country somewhere in the world, does not really indicate as someone who's really committed to what he's saying by mouth. You know, so but taxation is something that every patriotic Kenyan should be able to should be free to participate in contributing in the affairs of the country. And I support the president on how some of them. I always say that KRA is just that for the last 10 years since President Uhuru Kenyatta came in 2013, just after the 2010 Constitution, you know, he had the duty to truly execute devolution as it was written on paper. They say Kenyans went into the ballot and decided that these are the particular functions that we're supposed to devolve them to the county governments. Yes. They were supposed to ensure that within the next 1 or 2 financial years, because we even created a legal entity called the Transitional Authority, their job was supposed to anticipate what we'll need in transition and be able to take care of those things quickly, so that by now we'll be able to really be able to cascade in terms of how we collect access to the ground. And one of those agencies that are supposed to be fully devolved is KRA. KRA is supposed to be having an office in every ward, just like the way we have the chiefs, something like that, in every ward. So we're actually supposed to have 1,450 KRA offices. That's what President Uhuru Kenyatta ought to have done sometime in 2014. But obviously we are now 10 years down. That hasn't happened. This president has attempted. He is indeed attempting to sort of scale KRA, and I hope they really do scale it to the village level, so that then the government, if this government is able to net in 3 million more Kenyans into the tax bracket, they're able to collect over 6 trillion. That would be a huge boost in terms of addressing the issue of liquidity and having at least money for development in the interest of the people of Kenya.
All right. So, gentlemen, I want to close on the economy part before we switch to something else. There was a recent headline sometime last week that put such a shocker headline that Kibaki will be shocked at Rutonomics. I believe you must have come across that. Yeah. And on economy specifically, it's 60 years now. Are we moving in the right direction? Because that particular kind of headline, would have really come out as a hard hit at the head of state, in terms of, aren't leading the country in the right way in terms of the economy. Because if you look at just the debt issue, the difference between now and then, the expenditure, the difference between now and then, some of the policies that have been put now that perhaps the late president would not have agreed with. So on economy, Koi, yes, are we moving in the right direction 60 years later?
A good question is, are we moving in the right direction? How can we be moving in the right direction when you have the president telling you that our economy is growing and we are doing well, we are ranked this position globally? The same president who is planning to privatize government parastatals, including the iconic KICC. Are we moving in the right direction economically if we are having the price of commodities, specifically the very basic production commodity, oil and energy, being increased day in, day out? Are we moving in the right direction if we have the president traveling all over the country day in, day out without being accountable for his travels. Are we moving in the correct direction if we have the president and his cabinet every day alleged of a scandal in one way or another? Are we moving in the right direction if we have the government in place that is trying to sabotage the opposition, that is trying to come out boldly by threats and arrest of these vocal leaders, to be very specific? You see, some of these questions just are questions that Kenyans need to ask themselves and find the questions and answers for themselves. And these questions and the answers they find should help them, and this time I hope they do so, should help them and guide them while they'll be making their next eligible election when they'll be in here. Because you can't be telling me we are looking for investors to bring in money and then we are trying to scrap off the visas. Do you know what that means? That means we are going to lose 5.9 billion yearly on visa fees, and we are trying to raise money to rather to create the economy. That one is going to mean that we can have everyone coming into the country with no regulations at all. Don't tell me about the internet or the online register or online verification or anything. We've had people even how many pseudo accounts do we have in the internet and all that being verified and everything? How many hacks? Even in our country we still even have a claim that was very valid in the Supreme Court based on the hacking of the main electoral system in the country, and you want to tell us that we will be having verifications online? This one means we are attracting terrorists, we are attracting drug lords, we are attracting all sorts of cartels that we have in this country, because now that this will be the running spot. You don't need anything to go there. All you need is just your fare and your money. You go there, even if you'll come here, you find a rotten economy. If you're from a first class, you'll sumbua the whole time. So that one, basically, we need the basic thing that this government should be trying to do. In as much as I always feel for Ruto, like he has a heart to help this country, but the progress that he's making is what is totally wrong. The people that is putting in his place to help him do this, it's either they don't follow instructions that Ruto seems to the public image to be giving, or they are being given, or the Kenyans are the ones who are being fooled. There's no two ways about it. It's only those two options. And if that is the way to go, we need to have a sober mind. We need to have sober people like it is very painful that sober people like David Ndii are in the economic committee of the president, and still they'll defend, criticize, at the same time do nothing about whatever they are saying. And we are expecting to be at par, and it's very shameful. We are comparing ourselves with the likes of Singapore, saying and always bragging that 60 years, 40 years ago we were at par. What is the right thing that they did that we didn't do? You see, and in the book of Professor Anyang' Nyong'o, His Excellency the Governor of Kisumu, in his book called A Leap into the Future, there's I think it is in the year 2010, they were in a summit with the then Singaporean Prime Minister, and they asked him, Nyong'o specifically quotes in his book, he asking the Prime Minister, what did you do that we didn't do? And the Prime Minister response, quoted from the book Nyong'o wrote, A Leap into the Future, said categorically, and I quote, while we were busy trying to make affordable housing for our people, your government was killing the likes of Tom Mboya. While we were busy making good strides for the nation and the economy of this nation, your country and your kingsmen were busy gluttoning and grabbing all the public facilities that they found. And if you look, that was a book that was written in 2010, and if you look at it right now, it is indeed a leap into the future. They leaped into the future and they saw what we have seen. When others were working, we were busy having petty issues in the country, and now while they are advanced, we are trying to compare ourselves with them. That 60 years ago, 70 years ago, it is very shameful. And I'm not even supposed to be talking about what the president said in his speech more than what he did not say. 60 years ago, while our flag was being raised, there were three enemies that we're supposed to be fighting: poverty, illiteracy, and diseases. Right now, we still have the government who is, to tumetenga pesa ya NHIF. That means even the healthcare, the diseases we are unable to manage. Illiteracy, we want to go back to the illiterate being if we want to make the education expensive. And there's a wise quote by a very good friend who said, if you think education is expensive, try illiteracy. You will know how illiteracy is expensive and costs so much.
You know, Cynthia, for an economy to be doing well, or for an economy to be considered to be doing well, it has to be strong. And for you to have a strong economy, it means you have to have a strong manufacturing sector. Those are areas in production where you're able to invest. That is, if you're able to quickly invest in areas that are able to produce, so that Kenyans at least are able to feed themselves, earn some salary, and then be able to take care of their families. That is how then you can tell that whether or not an economy is doing well. When you look at the country and how it has been the last 12 months, the cost of fuel at the time when this president was coming in was at 159. Today we're talking about 217 shillings and some 30 or 40 cents. It means the prices are much higher than what they were the other day. The cost of food production, and you know, one of the other things was in a different show, someone was telling me, it was on this narrative of the fertilizer, and I had to go down into breaking down the cost of production, and I was telling him, every time we talk, I want to address the issue of food, you say that we've lowered the cost of production, you say we've lowered the cost of fertilizer. Fertilizer is only 7% of the total cost of production. It comes to when you're farming. You know, you have to buy the seedlings and the fertilizers, you have to do the digging and the harrowing and storage and transport of produce to the market. When you compile all that, you realize that the portion of which fertilizer comes into play is a very small amount. And then this particular only goes for the cash crops, the ones that we are consuming on a daily basis. But you know, I do not think you eat one crop the whole week. There's something that you take for breakfast, there's something that you take for meal. It's quite confusing. So you can't tell that the economy is doing well when every other thing that a Kenyan faces, and that is not just one thing. Remember, cost of living is not just food alone. If you cannot pay for your house today, Cynthia, if you cannot pay for your medicine, you realize I have a small bump here. We had an accident somewhere in Kitengela there, and we had to quickly rush to a small hospital there so that at least because I was bleeding. And what we saw there, because it was a public facility and this was an emergency, so we were like, let's find the quickest hospital, at least we get some injection. Then we can proceed to a better hospital some other day. We found a hospital somewhere in Athi River there, a public facility that was completely leave alone the drugs. There was nobody there. Yet we had sick people in there hoping that somebody will show up from his bed and turn up to work so that they can be able to be served. It's a terrible situation. So you can't tell that the economy is doing well. I think the economy is doing much, much worse when you look at the numbers. And this is not just bullshitting because of politics, but it's actually when you look at the figures and you say, on these 5 particular issues, Cynthia, food, education, transport, medicine, and something else. There's about 5 of them. When you narrowly go down into figures and look at what we were a year before, and then you look at what we are today, certainly the economy hasn't done well, and the president hasn't quite painted that. This president, I always tend to think that maybe we need to buy a lying machine. So that we can be able, every time this president speaks, we're able to
detect a lie.
Which is true. Which one is true. Because what he says is correct, but it just doesn't tally with what is on the ground. Yes. All right, so gentlemen, I'd love to shift this focus away from the economy and let's talk about matters politics and governance now, as we also track that on just the 6 years of independence. Now, I'll begin off from the elections part, and the head of state was very insistent that, you know, we have grown as a country on how Kenyans conduct the elections, and he says it is based on matters of issues and national interest. Now, we've had quite different elections previously. Just looking at how the pattern of voting, or at least how Kenyans vote, the pattern of voting in 2022 elections, in 2017 and 13, and subsequently the rest that follow behind. Do Kenyans vote based on issues and matters of national interest, or are they tribal?
Kenyans vote basically based on who sorts me now. And that is number one issue in a cosmopolitan area like Nairobi and major towns. But the rest of the people in the rural area, they will vote with the famous Swahili slang, huyu ni wetu, like our person. They have an ownership in that sort of, they want to feel part of the person they are electing. So either they will try to associate themselves either by tribe, by associating themselves whether in the groups that whatever they are doing together or something of that sort. And a few portion of Kenyans vote based on issues, and those who always vote based on issues, maybe 2 or 3% of them comes out happy that their candidate has won. Because we all know the Kenyan politics, how it is played and how it is done, and the elections, how it is conducted itself. And we've always had day in, day out people complaining about elections being rigged. Day in, day out, people are complaining about the officials, the elections officials. And I won't criticize the elections and its facilities and how it's conducted so much strongly today, but whatever I would want to have it echoed in terms of elections is that we are now 60. We are independent. We've been independent for 60 years. Let our elections also be independent. We do not need to have people going out to depend on international bodies to come and oversee how we do our elections. You see, now this is a live example. Like for instance, for 60 years, there have been advancement in elections in terms of how elections are being conducted and how they are being done. And hopefully one day this country will come to realize the importance of democratic election with a sober mind and sober people voting. But when we keep on continuing to go and depend on, after election we have to see what the CG observer from which organizations had this to say, ambassador from these nations had this to say. No, we are 60 years independent. We became a republic 60 years ago. This issue of depending on people to come and tell you how you should be doing your own internal affairs, you know, you can easily relate it with like a young man who was grown enough and asked his father for his piece of land so that he can own the land and build his home and continue with his family. He goes ahead and asks the father to help him marry a wife, and then, you know, after your dad has done all this to you, and whether he does it willingly or unwillingly, you cannot go back to him and start asking him to come and help you sire your children. No, those are some of the things that we should try avoiding, while avoiding that we need affirmation from a specific organization or from specific country. Let us focus as a country, let us be independent as we are, and if we try doing that and we focus, even if we are having our own crisis, we are having it as an independent crisis that we are able to solve independently.
You know, Cynthia, I always say that no Kenyan makes a mistake by going to the ballot and choosing a leader of his own choice. I've said it dozen times to you and other people as well, because Kenya is a free democracy and everybody is free to vote for somebody for whatever reasons they have. I could go and vote for you. I could come and vote for somebody else just because, Cynthia, you snatched my husband. And probably that's not a valid, there's not really a valid reason, but I could vote it out of hate. But you see, that again is democracy.
Yes.
But where I try to, but if I may just delve into it more, is because Kenya has been now around only for 60 years. It's still a growing nation, and the voters are slowly begin to understand the importance of how to vote and why you should vote. And when you look at certain regions, largely when you look at the dynamics of the Kenyan voting patterns in this particular country, it's only in 3 or 4 or 5 regions where you can predict their vote. But a huge chunk of the country, particularly in the north, when you go to the south there, people there don't hardly vote, especially for presidential elections. They hardly vote for people who are coming from their homes, because most of the times are not from their homes. So when they look at leaders, they probably look at their own personal interests and what benefits them. You understand? So we are at a position where the voter is now beginning to increasingly understand the value of why they should go to vote. When you look at how governors are being elected now, because governors now, you know, the governorship press has become like a sort of a test run on what the presidency should look like, because it's an executive role. And so people are being given a chance to manage funds and people, so you're able to tell from the governors, like it is in the US, you know, most of the presidents in the US, which is considered as the freest country in the world, is that most of the presidents are governors, because you're able to tell how he was able to manage a small portion of people and their budget. Then with that, then you can have a picture of what kind of a presidency that particular person would be. And at that particular time, people were electing largely governors just because we're coming from certain parties and coming from you know, their ethnic communities. But when we went to the 2017 election, at that particular time, Cynthia, people were saying that you know, none of these all these governors are billionaires, and none of these governors are going to lose an election, because it was believed that it's very hard to lose an election for the governors. But look, 23 governors went home.
Yes.
You understand? More than half. I think it was a shocker. Bungoma, you know, a governor left. Governor.
And he was reinstated.
But he left. You know, nobody could imagine that this governor could lose. It means the voters are began to understand why who a governor should be like, and that could translate also in the many other positions of a member of parliament. That's why in Kakamega County, which is my home native county, we have Mheshimiwa Halwale, who's an articulate legislator, a very good guy to oversee government. But most of the people there don't see him as a manager, and so they told him, he tried in 2017, they tell him, brother, you're doing well, but you're not a governor. A governor must be, you know, have an idea of who a governor must be. Is an industrial person that is able to manage people and funds, and they just didn't see that in him. And so when he came back to his old position as senator, he was elected as an individual. He was the only elected UDA in the whole county, because the members of parliament, none of them is UDA. So it means the voters in that particular county have an idea of who a governor should be and who should be a legislator. And my hope is that translates into also the rest of the country in the future elections, so that at the very least, even though we might not be perfect in how we make our choices and how we end up choosing our leaders across the board, right from the MCA to the presidency, but if we take that trajectory where voters are able to assess and, you know, to attach personality to a role, so that you're able to tell this person can be a very good oversighter, or can he be a good manager of funds, that shows that we're going to the right direction. And I hope that is what is sustained in the very many other elections that are coming in this particular country.
All right, so gentlemen, because we are out of time, I'd love to give you an opportunity to wrap it up in your final word, but also try to include the question on whether Parliament is independent or not, because we've heard of scenarios where the executive is, you know, pulling strings in Parliament to pass certain laws, to pass certain bills, to appoint certain people into, you know, offices of high authority. So in a few minutes, wrap it up, Koi, as you answer that question. Is Parliament independent?
Basically, there's no arm of the government that is independent. Even the judiciary that is expected and is given that mandate by the Constitution of Kenya. That is what I have to say about the independence of any arm of the government, including the Parliament, which is not an exemption. Secondly, what I have to say to the great people of Kenya, the great nation and the great country, let us not lose hope. We are still in this, and we will finally have that what we deserve. It may not come now, or it may not come today, but if we keep, I like the fact that most of us are most of us are working towards trying and achieving the Kenya that was perceived that we should be having. We are working towards it. We hopefully one day, even if not now or today, hopefully one day we'll be able to achieve what a democratic Kenya means.
You know, Cynthia, certainly the Kenyan Parliament is not independent, and not even many of the institutions. Just look at how the registrar of political parties is conducting herself. It's terrible, and it's one of those institutions that are being proposed to be turned into a commission, so that at least we have a bigger panel that is able to make independence. That lady should be out of office by now. But thanks to the compromise that we have in terms of governance. So Parliament is certainly not independent. You can look at the behavior of how the parliamentarians. Actually, I always tell people that all the 200, the reason why we have 3 arms of government well set up in our constitution is so that we're able to oversee each other. So all the 290 members of parliament ordinarily are supposed to oversee the executive. But it's unfortunate that sometimes when you get into parliament, there are those who sit there and purport to be coming from the government side. So they give government blank checks to be able to make mistakes, obviously betraying the cause of what the mandate the people of Kenya have given them. So with that, that's it. The parliament is not independent, but I want to encourage Kenyans. You know, we are 60 years in. We still have a long way to go. Currently, the government is in the hands of a motivational speaker. I hope in the hands of a motivational
Pastor Doctor.
I hope the president encourages Kenyans to work hard. They pay their taxes, and even as they collect their taxes, please let the president manage their taxes in the interest of all the Kenyans.
Sure.
Right, thank you, gentlemen. Willis Koya, governance expert, and George Ngaita, political expert, for coming in to shed light and just tracking whether or not we are headed in the right direction. The president says the country is in the right trajectory. Willis Koya is saying absolutely no, that is not the way. So thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming in this morning. In case you've missed this broadcast, you can rewatch it through our social media platforms. That is on Facebook and on YouTube on EBN TV, or engage with us throughout the day as we celebrate 60 years and many more. Well, that is a wrap for Morning Live. Thank you for your valuable company. My name is Cynthia Nanjala. Have yourselves a wonderful morning.